So on our fantastic panel today, looking at the physical security service, we are joined by Brandon Shafikhani, CEO of Samaritan SPS. We are joined by Daniel Farr, Vice President of ASPIS Protection Service. We are joined by Carl Persons, Director of Red 5 Consulting and Training at Red 5 Security. And we are joined by Nathan Ackerman, Senior Program Manager, Security Services at Riley Risk. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the DMV. The only difference being you're in it and I'm not, but it's nice to be where you are. And for that, I think we should open with a nice sort of high-level question, just to paint a picture. We've painted a picture about the cyber service of the future. But before we do that, for this, Brandon, let's start with you. What special considerations does the physical security service of today have to take into consideration in the DMV?
Oh, that's a big question. We could have a whole forum just for that. The one big in my mind, the special consideration for the physical side of the house and security, especially when you're talking executive protection and mobile security, things of that nature, would be the legal side of the house and the licensing requirement. Because as I've mentioned before, my office here in Woodbridge, I can be in Maryland and DC and back in my office within 30 minutes, transitioning between those jurisdictions. So that's an area that we focus on a lot, making sure that we're in compliance, regardless of what our clients may need or want, for that matter. They don't always understand our limitations and our requirements. So that's something that we have to take into consideration every day.
I like it. Well, Daniel, I think we went over this in the pre-call as well. What's particularly been in demand these past 12 months? It's not a COVID panel, don't worry, but it's what type of physical security service, Daniel, has been in demand these last 12 months?
12 months, we've been doing a lot of executive transportation to and from businesses and events, and a lot of static security, pretty much. With that said, the personal protection specialist, executive protection, in the state of Washington, D.C. is not recognized. So the way that you have to react and do things in the D.C. area, like Brandon said, we have to strategize and we have to be real careful how we do things, and we do our due diligence when we go into DC, because there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of, especially nowadays with all the COVID-19, with everything that's going on downtown in DC, there's a lot of eyes being noticed into every motorcade that goes into DC is going to be able to get searched. They're going to ask questions. What are you doing there? What are you not doing? So we've been requesting to do a lot of static for the meantime, but everything's starting to pick up right nowadays.
Well, I'm glad it's remained fruitful. Obviously, it has been a big period of transformation. Well, Nathan, obviously those outside the DMV may not have had all the election things to contend with and things like that. But I was wondering, can you paint a picture of how physical security as a service has changed from a business perspective, maybe? Are you starting to offer different things that perhaps weren't needed before? I think you're on mute, Nathan.
Okay, so apologies. Yeah, no, certainly yes. The short answer is yes. And how I would describe that is, if we were sitting at the table, a couple of years ago, our space at that table has certainly grown a little bit larger. Not only in terms of COVID situation, that's kind of a bucket of time that's been dropped on a lot of security organizations that was not anticipated. But the travel arrangements too, travel risk management and all of that, that's something that has certainly been increasingly been more of a priority or focus for our clients within the DMV area. And then, kind of to add on to that, with that increased responsibility, being able to parlay that to the clients, what are we doing to address their risks? It's moved from more of just managing security to managing risk, and how we can, demonstrate that and translate that to the key stakeholders. That certainly has changed.
I like that. So let's run with that risk manager question. Carl, obviously when we last were in the DMV virtually, it was just before the election. So all eyes were on that. And some people were a little disappointed at the public sector for various reasons. But how has the private security sector then changed? And was that a catalyst, or was it the COVID, or was it digital transformation? What was behind the physical security service transformation?
I mean, there's, it's sort of like all paths converged at one time, and you had to, those on this panel and who are very familiar, especially with the DMV, there's the rest of the country and then there's the DMV, and you have to be able to adjust to anything that's coming. And you have to then supersize it to the events that are going on in DC. The rules, like Brandon mentioned and Daniel, are crucial. So what does that do? That changes the business perspective. So then you take what was already difficult, and everyone here got used to managing the risks with, adding COVID, and we manage that risk, and then the insurrection happens, right? So then now the Capitol and its perimeters morph out. And I know in previous panels, the gentleman from Fannie Mae said, hey, now the perimeter is right at my doorstep. It's right there. It's what was before fences out, around Lafayette Park are now at the front door of Fannie Mae. So it changes everything. So if I was bringing a client to Fannie Mae, now my whole game plan changes, things change. So from a business perspective, that's the one thing about the companies like ours and like the other gentleman here, is you have to be ready to morph like an amoeba in any direction, and then come up, and that means staying proactive the entire time, thinking ahead. Okay, what if? The what if is always on the table with the DMV.
I like it. And that what if, in previous panels, last year we were painting a picture of what if your really important principal is in a room with loads of other really important principals, and then an even bigger important principle comes in. So the what if in the DMV, I like that flavor. Brandon, on the business side, obviously, it's not. Honestly, it's not often done that we take a cyber security service, bunch of topics, and we include a physical security bunch of topics. But I'd like to think it's becoming more commonplace, mainly because, as I think Daniel mentioned, or Nathan mentioned, we're becoming risk managers. Is that the key transformation, or are you, as a physical security service, bundling, just as all the IT people are bundling? Are you bundling extra services?
Well, I will completely agree and say 100% that we are risk managers. We're not cybersecurity experts. We're not executive protection specialists. We're not close protection operatives. We're not, name whatever you want to name. We are risk managers, and our client's risk is our risk. So we have to be adaptable to that. I am not a cybersecurity expert. However, I know where to find one, and we have them on our roster, and we have developed strategic partnerships with other organizations to be able to provide these niche level services, where we in and of ourselves are a niche and a boutique risk management firm. But there's that lovely word that everybody likes to throw out now, convergence, and that is a real thing. Our risk managers don't necessarily have to be subject matter experts, but we have to be abreast and aware of the threats and the vulnerabilities that our clients may face in their unique circumstances. So we are risk managers overall.
I like it. And you said, you know who to call. And so I'm actually curious, over these last 12 months, who have you been calling that you haven't been calling before? I mean, I'm curious to see, is it more TSCM? Is it more threat intel? What do you think the physical security service has been, bundling more of?
For us specifically, it's been more on the threat intelligence side of the house. So we've been providing that more as intelligence as a service, and really we attribute that a lot to COVID. You know, with everything being closed down, people want to prevent risk. They're not going out as much. They want to know before they know. And we have been pushing that pretty heavily with our client base as well. So that's been what we've done. TSCM as well. We've done country reports and risk analysis, but it's really been on the threat mitigation, and protective intelligence side of the house for us specifically.
I like it. I like it. Well, Daniel, for you, you know, what sort of technology has become increasingly appealing over COVID? Because I know we sometimes have Joe Ortega on, and he talks about protective mobility technology, but maybe that will make a comeback. I don't know. Is there a sense, Daniel, of things that you've been using more of these last 12 months? Daniel, can you hear me? Well, I tell you what, whilst Daniel, we wait for Daniel. Nathan, maybe same question to you. Is there some sort of technology that you've been, you know, forced to use more of these last 12 months?
Well, I think everyone's been forced to use technology in the last year, right? Remote work. Everyone's had to set up a home office, been moved. I've had clients in two of the main locations in the DMV area, in Crystal City and downtown on M Street, that the offices are now empty. Folks are working from home. That's kind of an exposure for a lot of folks. Now also, you know, our clients' focus is a little bit more international. A lot of my focus is spent on countries and outside the United States as well. And that's something our firm, we've developed a security as a service platform to manage that, because it's very spread, it's wide open. And the purpose of that was to simplify a lot of that, because you might have all the answers, you may not have all the answers. You might know who you need to call, but it's really that country director working in Nairobi that needs that access to that information, knows how to use it and how to, you know, handle that obligation, that duty of care obligation for the client. That's something that has certainly expanded as a service, and will continue to do so. The more the industry moves towards that direction, the more the clients will expect it and demand it and expect it on a continual basis.
And Nathan, I'd be interested because, of course, you know, we do a lot on the EP topic. Have you had to reassess a lot of your local, you know, suppliers because they may not be there anymore, or they may have changed?
Right, absolutely. Yep. And then the other question is to the benchmark, right? You know, how well can they move about the locations? If the team gets sick, what do you have on a roster to replace that team? The testing question, are they testing before they report for duty? I've got a project in Ukraine right now, which is, you know, very difficult to manage with the new increases there. That's going to be a constant struggle, just like in many other locations. So that's going to be a challenge, certainly for the next bit of time while we deal with this.
I like it. I like it. And let's go to Carl. You mentioned you know, this morning's panel, and of course we had Robert Facito from Fannie Mae. He's come back and forward throughout the day, and we talked about wellness and resilience as well. How has the resilience of the physical security service sort of had to adapt? Obviously, there's a big perception everyone is you know, strong and is capable of, you know, whatever, but resilience is a real thing. So I want, you know, has it changed?
Well, I mean, in the DMV, like everywhere, but yeah, particularly here too, again, it speaks to the depth of the and the relationships that you have with partners. So, you know, with COVID, you set up a threshold based on the client. At the time when COVID hit, you know, our long-term client, we had to set up thresholds, we had to set up testing, and then we had to have redundancies. We had to make sure that if one guy was down, another guy was up. You know, we were keeping them separating shifts. So, in order to be resilient, you have to be redundant in some of your capabilities. You have to be able to look ahead and then say, yeah, this is, you know, I've got to be able to lean on someone else in the event that my team gets sick and goes down. Or which we did a lot of too, was reaching out to partners in other states. So rather than, you can't travel people. So you're reaching out to partners in other states or overseas and saying, listen, you're going to accept this team, our client, and one person rather than a team of people. Or we're going to have to rely on them to do our advanced work for us, give us that look. And the intel, again, is hard because people aren't out. The intel is out. So you're doing, you're not doing a lot of physical looking, but more through a lot of your online capabilities. So I think that, that is huge. To having those resiliencies built up and the ability to shift left or right makes a big difference.
I like that, and that question of resiliency as adaptability, I think, is something that reverberates around most of today's sessions. There's parallels because business is business, and resilience of that business is everybody's business. To warrant a better phrase, Daniel, can you hear me? Brilliant. How has that all changed for you then? That'd be a good question.
Yeah, so we've been pretty much hands-on in DC with absolutely everything, and just touching base back on and piggyback on, we have to plan for what is the worst and what if, because it will happen. Our main source that we have been able to use and we rely 24/7 is on our SIAC team, which is what they'll prepare for everything. Like Carl said, might not be able to be put on ground at the moment in time, but we can always do our open source intelligence and get everything, gather all our details as much as we can before we transport or do absolutely everything that we need to do. The key to all this, whether it be overseas or whether it be in DC or any part in the United States, and it's like you need to have your resources and you need to work with teams. You need to have all the corporations who you want to get involved with, and you need to have all that right trusted team, because we can be in DC and then all of a sudden I can't fly to Tennessee, but I can pick up a phone call and call our guys down, our trust partners, and they can handle everything. So it's working together in this in the whole security team. We just have to work together and have everything ready. A major thing that we've been doing a lot is intelligence, threat analysis, advances reports as much as we can. Travel has been a little bit of on the whole, but it's starting to pick up. Everything is starting to move on nowadays in DC, in Maryland, and Virginia, all over. And so it's been good to have our team working 24/7, which we have a good inter-analyst guy working for us. So it's been a good back support for us, and especially in the guys in the field.
I like it. Well, let's run with the topic of the SOC that you mentioned, Brandon. When we ask, and we're going to ask our next panel, so some of them are already here. We're going to be asking about the modernized corporate security of the future. But is the SOC then the place that this modernized physical security service can really come into its own? Given that actually a SOC might end up being the same SOC for a physical service as a cyber service. A SOC is a SOC, or is it not? I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I definitely think that a SOC is an integral part of an organization, especially a large organization's risk management posture. It's not necessarily the do all be all. It does have its limitations, because we have to remember that whatever you call it, a SOC, a TOC, an EOC, whatever, its purpose is to receive and disseminate and analyze information. And without that, you have to have the right people in place, whether it's an intelligence analyst, whether it's a cybersecurity analyst, a physical guy. It can be what brings everything together. But at the same time, not all organizations have the ability or the finances to be able to have a SOC. That being said, what we can also do is embed subject matter experts into their cybersecurity team or physical security team or their intelligence cell, because a lot of companies don't have an organic intelligence apparatus. So that is part of intelligence or security as a service or managed security, however you want to call it. But a SOC is definitely the nucleus, or it can be the nucleus of a robust risk management solution.
I like that. And then Nathan, maybe because your work is overseas, it's not so much on the continental United States. What does that do to the physical security service? Because I don't know, that we have a lot of discussion about what the cyber security service will look like. We've got lots and lots of sparkly boxes. People try and sell them all day long. But I wonder what that transformation has in store for the physical security service.
Right. Well, no, Brand brought up a good point. You considering a SOC, whatever you call it, right, as a nucleus, that's true. You can call it a hub. It doesn't matter how fancy the screens are, the technology that's there. It's the people sitting in there that have the experience, that when that phone rings or when a situation happens, they know how to get that information, how to disseminate, and how to make an action, in a very quick manner when seconds count. Not necessarily, I can get a report to you probably by tomorrow, but I need bluff up front right now. I need a decision point right now. I think it's going to be something that's going to be critical for the future for certainly a lot of organizations. We will probably see a lot of organizations will start working together to blend a lot of those resources together. That's where relationships come into play, and we talked about that on the pre-conference call. But it's certainly going to be an integral part of the physical side, and it's going to integrate with the cyber side. It certainly will. It's already moving towards that direction.
And relationships, that's something people can all get behind. And especially we know from, at least you telling me, that in the DMV relationships are everything, because you need to get everything done. Carl, what are sort of more unusual relationships, maybe even technology partner relationships have taken place throughout these last 12 months for you?
Well, again, you're always having to adapt to the needs of the client. OPSEC has always been huge, even from the Secret Service days. OPSEC is important. All of our, it's very important. One of the things, and I think in what I touched on in our pre-discussions, was how the cyber and into everything's kind of blending with physical security quite a bit. So even on the privacy side, it's important for the clients. They're worried about their physical security and the privacy together. And a lot of times for us, the privacy is starting to creep in and pushing the physical security side. So when we're managing someone being hacked, now it's just not a financial loss, it's a potential physical threat. So we've been working quite a bit, especially over the last 12 months, with where those two blend together and meet, and now it's just not, hey, we'll push it to our privacy side of our house or our physical side, but I've literally sat in on the top level and brought in the pieces together to manage the entire thing, because we really don't know where it's going to go. Whether that physical security breach bleeds into a privacy piece or vice versa. So we're not handling just specifics anymore. It's kind of like everything's out on the table, and now we want to hear the entire problem, and then we want to kind of look at the vulnerabilities and say, yeah, it's a little bit bigger than just you lost your email or you lost, and this is important for our corporate clients, especially the ones visiting DC and or who are based wherever. But that's a really big deal now for us.
I like it. And that reflects back to what Brandon, Nathan, and Daniel have sort of been alluding to. And in fact, let's go to Brandon because Mike made a comment. He says Brandon was correct. Cybersecurity professionals must be engaged in physical security because network hardware, network cabling, and data centers have physical presence. So there's a natural coalescence. Where should we look to now when thinking about the physical MSS of the future? Is it a different procedure, a different structure, a different look, or in these panels that we will undoubtedly have at many conferences, will we simply be saying, what technology have you bought today? I feel it has to be more nuanced than that. You know what I mean, Brandon?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as things start to converge together, not start to, they are. This has been going on for a while. But things are changing, but in some respects, things are almost, for us at least, kind of changing back, or we're starting to see those signals of things changing back to how they were. We've had to adapt, just like Carl was saying, adapt and be resilient and overcome and change as our clients' needs and our own limitations do. But now we're starting to see people are starting to make plans for travel. We're having more diplomatic travel and events pop up. We're seeing people that now, even Washington, D.C., the DMV area is number 4 or 5, I think, for the travel destination in the United States. So that will be in our very near future. We're going to transition to almost pre-COVID with something new that it looks like. It's not going to be exactly like pre-COVID, but we're going to have people traveling, people going to events, people moving around with these limitations, whatever they may be. So we're kind of bouncing back and forth of COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, and where we're at right now. But things are changing pretty rapidly here in the National Capital Region.
Love it. Well, again, we could continue this for a long time, but we are out of time. So please give Daniel, Nathan, Carl, and Brandon a big virtual round of applause. It's a pleasure to have you, and I look forward to seeing you in the audience.